I think most people out there realize that we see more Republicans as guests on this program than we do as Democrats. And I think Democrats are shy sometimes from sitting down with a host who happens to be registered with a Republican Party and closely identified with Republican principles and the like. And I don't think we have a long list of Democrats who are running for governor. Maybe none of them will, which means the real race is going to be for the primary in Idaho next year, coming up in May. We're joined in studio by one of those Republican candidates, Tommy Ahlquist, and Steve Millington dropped by too as well, because you've met the candidate a few times too, we should point out.
Yes, I have.
And tomorrow you're going to be a guest at the Lincoln Day event in Jerome County.
Yes, I will. Yeah.
So you're spending the night in the area.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of this 97 town tour in about 65 days. Shouldn't say in the middle, about 3/4 of the way done. So we have a bunch of events today up in Blaine County, then several more tomorrow, and then we've got about 2 more weeks and we're done. It's been incredible. We've had already had over 400 meetings. I've been meeting with mayors, city councils, county commissioners, a lot of school superintendents. I've toured a lot of schools around the state in rural Idaho, and then business leaders. Over 100 businesses so far, medium, large businesses. Just sat down with their owners and said, "How are things going for you? What are your biggest challenges?" And it has been an incredible experience. So we spent the whole day yesterday here in the Magic Valley, and it was wonderful.
I have a coworker named Penny Main, and her brother uh, manages a large complex in Boise, and says that your name is very well known there. If anyone mentions your name, people know immediately who you are. But it's simply in a big state like this, you've got to get out early, and if you want to spread that name recognition, you have to be in a lot of places.
Yeah, yeah. The analogy we use is we're kind of starting on our 5 yard line. And in the Treasure Valley, we do have some name recognition, but it's a big state, and it's Idaho. So although we'll get mailers out and do some commercials, which we're doing, people want to shake your hand. And for goodness sakes, I'm asking them to trust me in the highest elected position in the state, never being a politician. They're going to want to know you. They're going to want to shake your hand and know what you think about a lot of things. And so I get that. So we're kind of just getting started. We finished this tour the 13th of May and still have a whole year left till the 15th of May the next year. So we're not going to leave any stone unturned and find all those voters and let them get to know me around the state.
We should point out, though, that recent history suggests that business developers can do very, very well in politics, even without a lot of experience in previous political office.
I hope so. That's what I'm banking on.
Well said. We wanted to point out as well, you've got a medical background.
Yeah, so I went to medical school and then residency in emergency medicine down in Tucson, Arizona at the University of Arizona. And then I practiced medicine in Idaho for 15 years, 18 years total. I've seen more than 40,000 patients in the emergency room. And not just in the Treasure Valley. I worked a lot in Weiser Memorial Hospital, and I worked a lot in Blaine County. So I really have a good feel, I think, for the people of Idaho, because you can't help but do that. I did all night shifts, and you spend some nights with the folks that in their great time of greatest need. You can really get to know them well. So I think that background is part of the reason I'm running. As we go around the state and talk to companies and say, what's your biggest challenge right now? What keeps you awake at night? Healthcare premiums right now
Mhm.
are crippling cities, counties, companies of all sizes. And then you meet with families and say, what do you need most out of your leadership? And they'll tell you, we need something done. We can't sustain this anymore with incomes that are pretty fixed and premiums that go up. And one of my passions is how do we get out of this? When Obama, you remember when Biden whispered in the ear of Obama and got caught
Yeah.
on tape and said, this is a big blanking deal.
Yeah.
I actually was working that day. And I remember thinking to myself, yeah, you're right, because it was just really horrible, horrible legislation. And I think that's panned out. The subsidies to the insurance companies didn't burn off until his last year in office, which was end of 2016. And you knew that. You knew that years ago. And yet when I talk a couple of quick stories, Cal Ranch stores over eastern Idaho, 25 stores, their premiums this year went up 62%. My very next meeting was with the Ford dealership in Rexburg. Mont, who owns it, 100 employees, went up 41% this year. So think about that. Those insurance premiums are escalating with the subsidies. those subsidies burn off, we've got a problem. We're at a tipping point. So I think my medical background will really help me tackle a lot of those issues. We're lucky. We're nimble. We're small. We have great health systems in this state. So we can do some creative things to get through this, but we got to get control back at the state level.
We're going to take a short break, and want to point out, if you've got a question, already people have questions and comments for our guest, Tommy Ahlquist, who's running for governor here in Idaho as a Republican. Primary is about 13 months away, but in this day and age in politics, you have to get started early, and you've got to get out and let people know what you think and find out what they think and get that conversation going. We'll return to that in just a couple of minutes. Also, quickly wanted to mention our friends this morning at Waddell and Reed. This is a company that's been investing money for people since 1937. People ask me from time to time, do you think they know what they're doing? Well, 80 years in business might be a good answer for that. They were one of the oldest firms in the country to offer mutual funds, and they actually own and manage 2 mutual fund families, investing by a conservative nature. And I wanted to point out as well, they take a planning approach because they know that each individual client has individual needs and goals. And what they'll do is build that for you individually, helping you manage money. And again, at Waddell and Reed, they take planning personally. Our studio guest is one of a handful of candidates who is seeking the Republican nomination for governor here in Idaho. A primary day is, we say 13 months, but it's actually, in a couple of days, we'll say 12 months. And we wanted to point out, if you'd like to speak with candidate Tommy Ahlquist during the course of our program today, you can reach us by dialing 736-0300, 736-0300. You're going to be a popular man today. Telephones have been ringing since you launched into your discussion on healthcare. We've got our first caller with us during this segment. And caller, you're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
Oh, am I on with Tommy Ahlquist?
You are.
All right. I have a question. So I'm a small business owner here in Idaho, and I just feel like, I'm drowning. I just got done paying my taxes, and it was ridiculous. And I just want to know, for me, Otter hasn't done a lot for small businesses in Idaho. Little is kind of the same thing. I know he's running again. So Tommy, tell me about you. What are you going to do to help me out?
Thank you for that question. So even though I'm a physician and I've spent a lot of my life doing that, I consider myself more of a small business man. I started several businesses. Just a couple to mention, I started a med tech company in 2001. We're now the largest provider of service to automated external defibrillators in the nation. We manage 665,000 of them. I've started some other traditional businesses, and I will tell you, until you've paid your taxes and payroll, and you lay in bed at night and say, okay, whatever's left after all that, that's what I make. That's a really good experience to have before you get into government. And I believe that the economy of Idaho rests on the backs of small business, period. And I hope that my legacy, when I leave office several years from now, is that I was the small business governor. We need help. And let me give you one example of this session that just makes me so irritated. Unemployment tax, right? They had a ginormous surplus. This would have been the easiest legislation in the world to say, hey, we're going to reduce your rates and help small businesses. Somehow, in the craziness of this session, that didn't even get addressed. Got left. They were talking about coming back and having a special session because they said, oops, we forgot it. How do you forget your small businesses and not reduce your unemployment tax? That's this caller. That's exactly what she's asking. Who's looking out for small businesses in Idaho? It's a great question. There's too many mandates. There's a lot we can do.
Want to thank her for the call, and we have another caller chiming in this morning, 736-0300, and you're on the air with a candidate. Go ahead.
Good morning, Bill. Good morning, Mr. Tom. Got a question for you. I'm a small business, just kind of like that previous caller did. Not complaining too much about the taxes because I think that's just part of doing business in the great state of Idaho. And I like to have faith that the government, the politicians are doing what's right with the tax money, but many times it makes me scratch my head. But I have a specific point that I want to know how you would deal with it. And that's internet. Now and now more and more, that's like a damn utility. You need to have it. And we have such lousy internet connection in this state. I mean, I want to know what you're going to do to fix that, to make it better.
You mean being 50th in the nation isn't good enough? Yeah, it's time. The modern economy, not only do we compete internationally, but we compete against the states that surround us, right? So part of how we take care of our businesses here, part of how we take care of our kids and our schools, is to have a robust ability to compete in that environment, and we just don't. We need to pay more attention to that. We're a rural state. We could probably get into a large discussion about the network of internet to the schools and how that went, but there's a lot we can do. There's so much we can do, and it's critical to every business going forward that we pay attention to that part of the infrastructure. There's a whole discussion we can have on infrastructure, but that's certainly part of it.
I want to thank him for the call. I know that I was having a conversation at the Twin Falls County Fair last September with Megan Blanksma, and she was telling me at the time, of course, she has since been elected to the legislature, that being out on a farm in this day and age, your business, you desperately need a good internet connection. And she says it's now a public utility. It's just like running water systems, sewer systems, and anything else. Do you agree with that, that somebody needs to take that approach?
I do, and if you tour these businesses like I have, they're all high tech businesses now. It's ag tech now. It's all driven, and so I think it's certainly something we need to focus on.
Now, people are going to see your name a lot on signs coming up, and they're seeing. I have Fox News on here while I'm on the air, and I often see you already on television. But for people, spell the name for them and pronounce it for them.
So it's Tommy Ahlquist, Ahlquist. Yeah.
And they'll be learning a lot more about that name in the coming months. We have another caller with us. You're on the air with a candidate at 847 on KLIX. You're up next. Go ahead.
Good morning, gentlemen. Hey, I just had a question for you, Tom. In recent news, the last several months, Fish and Game has had a real struggle trying to get the attention and the respect of Idaho's hunters and fishermen. What are your plans, if any, or to do with the Fish and Game to try to increase their popularity and their honesty as far as managing game herds go and electing honest gentlemen to the Fish and Game Commission to run it?
Well, thank you for the question. As soon as people heard I was declaring, I've had several very well-respected folks come in and sit down. This is a major issue for hunters and fishermen in this state. Access to our lands and how they're managed is a critical issue. I think people want fair and balanced representation from the government, and I think that's what I'm hearing in almost every sector of what we provide. And Fish and Game certainly has come to the top of that in a lot of my meetings. So what I'd say is you get in, you dig, and you put the best people in those roles, and that's what I do.
Wanted to mention Tommy Ahlquist is joining us in studio until 9 o'clock this morning. We're at 8:48. We've got 34. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. He is one. There's three of you so far that are announced, right? Just three?
Yeah, there's three of us unless you count the homeless guy. But yeah, there's three of us.
So three Republican candidates announced so far. Probably not many more. We have another caller with us. You're up next. You're on the air with Tommy Ahlquist.
Hey, yes. Hey, thanks for taking my call. I appreciate that. This is Zach, and I was just curious. It seems like right now that just nothing is really changing when it comes to education, and I wanted to kind of hear what you thought about that. Right? I don't know. Is money? Are we not funding education enough, or is there something else that we need to do? I've heard a lot about the, different types of education, and whether it's STEM schools or, project-based learning, or what do you think we could do to kind of help our students to achieve more and to make Idaho maybe not rank so low in education?
Education is a big part of my platform. A couple things on funding. There's a couple of misconceptions out there. We're 49th in per pupil funding, but if you look at the amount of money that each household in our state contributes to education, we're actually top 15 because we're putting 63% of a $3.5 billion budget into education. In addition, we put an extra $500 million in since 2015, and if you look at the levies and bonds that just passed, we're doing our part to put money into it, but it's not always just money. One great thing about this tour, I'll tell you, is there are some great things going on in this state. There's districts I've visited. They're doing it very differently. Some of them very innovative in rural settings where their test scores and their achievement is off the charts. Up in North Idaho, there's a STEM academy, public charter school, 500 kids, 700 student waiting list. They're doing robotics and working with NASA. There are great things happening. I think it's about local control. I think it's about defining student achievement, and I think we need some changes at the top in the state Department of Education, and less, man. Section 33 of our code, we could probably get rid of 2/3 of it and allow our local school districts who know our kids best to really educate our kids. I spent time yesterday with Twin Falls School District superintendent. Great discussion, hearing what they've done to help integrate the schools into the community, into the businesses, and into the college. It's a great example of how to do that. That doesn't happen enough in Idaho. We need to harmonize education with the jobs that are in the community. It's just not happening right now. So a lot we can do, a lot we can deliver on, and the good news is a lot of these ideas won't require more money because we're already tapped out.
I want to thank you for the call. I read just a few weeks ago where Utah, which seems to spend the least on per capita on students, still has among the best students that come out of high school in the country. And I remember reading that same story about them a dozen years ago. Can we just say to them, what are you doing and what can we emulate?
Yeah, there are amazing ideas and things that are happening. But I'll tell you, just within our own state, there's these little pods of excellence. They're killing it. So the problem is not looking for the answer, it's scaling that answer across the state. But it all starts with leadership, right? So much of the time we talk about money, and that's important. It's important to take care of our teachers and to have pay scales that make sense and reward good teachers. I get all that. But it's leadership. It's allowing our superintendents, our principals, and our teachers to teach. I think we've gotten so much into mandates that you talk to these superintendents, and they look at you and they're just like, I spend all my time worrying about reports and mandates. I can't even teach these kids. So they need some relief. The teachers in the state love our children. The superintendents, all these communities are different. Wilder, Idaho, and Genesee, where I've toured schools, they're very different communities. They're approaching education differently, but excellence at both places. One very traditional, one very innovative. But the point is, let's define student achievement. Let's let these kids be taught by the teachers that love them, and let's get our kids ready for jobs here in Idaho and not lose them. Our greatest export in this state is not chips from Micron or potatoes or pumice from Malad. I didn't know we were the #1 pumice producer in the world till I went there. It is our kids. We're losing our kids. They're our best. They are our critical resource, and if we don't get them ready for jobs and keep them here, and by the way, when you go talk to companies, they're saying, I need kids ready for my jobs. Right here in the Magic Valley, you go tour, High Desert Milk. They'll say, what's stopping you from expanding? When you ask Randy, he's like, I don't have enough kids ready to work in these high-tech jobs. So it's harmonizing those two things together. It's really leading and changing the way we look at education and student achievement. We can do that with leadership.
We had an issue, I think, that got the coverage of it and the controversial aspect of it is probably much greater than the actual issue, but that was the governor's veto of the grocery tax repeal. Where do you stand on it?
So I started a group called Idaho 2020 a few years ago, and it was a group of CEOs from around the state because I didn't see our government looking at data and comparing ourselves and saying, how do we compete? So the first thing we did is we hired the Hoover Institute out of Stanford University. So it's a conservative think tank. We paid them a bunch of money to do an analysis of our taxes compared to the surrounding states. We're the highest. So if you look at our tax policy, our taxes are high and our achievements low. It's a tough place to be. I think we need to step back and say, what is the best way to tax our people? How do we flatten that tax, broaden that base, get rid of some exemptions, and lower the tax so we become more competitive? I don't like the way we do it in session. Sometimes we slice and dice tax policy. It gets rushed in at the end. We don't think about the long-term consequences. Think of the changing fuel economy with a gas tax. Where do we go with that going in the future? Battery technology is going to change so much. It already has in the last 3 years. Think about 5 years from now. We got to be thinking about what is the best tax policy for the state. So I would prefer to step back early on when I'm elected and say, let's look at our entire tax code. How are we going to tax our people that's fair and flat and more competitive? And then how do we fund infrastructure, which is a huge issue for us as a state.
And I think that was the governor, I don't think was necessarily opposed to repeal, but he was worried about if you're going to still have the same amount of spending, where do you make up the difference?
Well, we could get into a spending discussion too. I think as a private business guy, and I look at how our government spends our money, that first 100 days for me is going to be going line item by line item because I would really love it if they spent our money like I spend our money, my money. One quick example, there's a we're doing a large. It was just in the Statesman this morning, but we're doing a 75-acre project right off of the new 10-mile interchange on I-84, and that interchange cost $26 million. Just 2 weeks ago, we got bids back on doing a private interchange on the highway with a design build, private dollars going into it, $8.5 million. I don't get that.
Less than a third.
Less than a third. I don't get that. So we could sit here and talk a lot of examples. So hopefully we have a fresh look and a new approach at not only how are we taxing, but how are we spending so that we can maximize dollars. Some of what government should be doing is not just saying, okay, what am I doing to your taxes, but how am I spending your taxes? And I just don't see that happening enough. It's hard to do that without a fresh look and a new approach to government.
We have about a minute to go. If people wanted to look at a website, where would you send them?
TommyForIdaho.com. Follow us on this tour. We're posts and updates every day. We're really trying to get out. We're trying to have a response time on any questions, 24 hours on any way. Facebook or messaging or emails to me at Tommy@TommyForIdaho.com. We'll get back to you within 24 hours. But we heard there's only 155,000 voters out there in the primary. We want to meet all of you, every one of you. We got a whole year to do it. So reach out to us and we'll make some time.
And is that a 4 or the number 4 or
the word 4?
FOR.
Yep.
TommyForIdaho.com.
Yep.
And if people would like to actually meet you in person, they could help out the brethren in Jerome County by going to the breakfast tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning.
Yep. It starts at 9:00 and it's at the
at the barn.
Barn, Span Bar Barn. Actually, go north.
Mountain View Barn.
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you. Go north on Highway 93, just as you cross the railroad tracks. That's also 300 south on Jerome County stuff. And the barn will be on your left-hand side, just off the road. Pretend like you're going to Moss Greenhouse, make a turn right there, and then turn right into the parking lot behind the barn.
We have to thank Tommy Ahlquist for coming by, and Steve Millington dropped in too as well. We didn't get a chance to talk to you much. We'll have to do that Tuesday.
Yeah, I think there's a long list of things we can work on Tuesday.
All right.
See you then.
Short break coming up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in. And Todd Eccles is on the way. We're going to be talking firearms training and safety in the next half hour. Hope you can stick around. It's almost 9:00. Fox News first.